What's up guys, Erroneous here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today's video is going to be an informative one in a sense where what sets should you be keeping from Doom Tower? So artifact sets you want to keep from Doom Tower, which ones are good, which ones are great, which ones are underrated versus overrated, and everything in between. Now I'm only going over Doom Tower sets and whether or not you should keep them versus sell them, and ones that you could potentially keep even though they're not really worth keeping for a set. So I'll be talking about all of that in today's video, so stay tuned and let's get into it. Alright y'all, so in terms of forged sets, they're not all from Doom Tower, right? Some of them are actually just sets that you can farm from Faction Wars. But I'm not going to be talking about the Faction War sets. I'm not going to be talking about Swift Parry, Deflection, Resilience, Perception. I'm only going to be talking about every set from Doom Tower specifically, not from Faction Wars. So that means Affinity Breaker, Untouchable, Fatal, Frostbite, Bloodthirst, Guardian, Fortitude, Lethal, Instinct, Bolster, Defiant, and Righteous. So actually, Defiant and Righteous are not going to be a part of it. So Bolster also not going to be a part of it. Instinct not going to be a part of it as well, because these last four are actually not a part of the Doom Tower. So I wish they were a part of Doom Tower, but they're not. Right now you can only get them from specific Forge passes, and you can purchase extra sets of this or extra artifact pieces that you get right here, you know, instinct stones, so to speak, or other pieces. This is bolster stones, so on and so forth. However, you can't get this from Doom Tower, so I'm not going to talk about those, which means we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sets that we can go over. Actually 8 sets that we can go over in today's video. So first we're going to start off with Affinity Breaker. Now, Affinity Breaker you're going to get from the Nether Spider, which is going to be this guy right here. And I don't think Nether Spider is on rotation right now. Right now we have Dark Fae rotation, so I can't actually pull up Nether Spider to show you because I don't have access to the test server either. And I'm pretty sure it wouldn't show up on the test server regardless because of a specific rotation showing up today. So in terms of Nether Spider, you guys know who it is most likely, whether or not you're playing normal versus hard mode Doom Tower. You know that Nether Spider has Affinity Breaker, which drops these stones that give you a crit damage 30% plus a 50% chance to change a weak hit into a critical hit. This is on the more underrated side of things in terms of a set. Now, it is a 2-piece or a 4-piece set, so it is taking up a lot of slots for your artifacts in general for your champions. Now, I wish they created this into a 2-piece set and they made it like 15% crit damage and a 25% chance to change a weak hit to a critical, similar to what they did with Retaliation, where it used to be a 4-piece and they turned it into a 2-piece set, which it makes it way stronger, right? I wish they did that to this set as well, turn it into a 2-piece set instead. It would be a lot stronger. Of course, it's a very underrated set, right? The reason why I say it's underrated is because most people, they get this set and they typically just sell it off right away, because most of the pieces from here you're going to want to sell anyways. Like for example, I will go ahead and craft one and I'll show you this piece right here. It's attack with crit rate. Now, depending on where you're at in progression on your account, this could potentially roll out to be a good piece for you if you're early to mid game, right? So this video is tailored towards earlier mid game players, but in general, this is for any players out there who want to know a little bit more in depth about which sets to keep for Doom Tower. Now, this piece, of course, for my account, I would not keep it. And for lower level accounts, it could be decent. However, if it rolls triple roll HP or defense percent, it doesn't have a speed substat. So there's really no point in keeping this unless it triple rolls on crit rate. Unless you're really, really early game, then you got this. Then you could potentially keep it for a little while. But for my account, I wouldn't want to keep that. Now, I will say too, stats over sets all day, every day. The reason why is because if you have stats or you get a piece of gear that's a legendary 6-star piece, for example, and say Doom Tower set piece comes out to be legendary, and I have a piece like, I'll show you one example. For example, I've got Fortitude. I don't really use Fortitude very much, but I will go over that in a bit. So this Fortitude piece is not the best, I will say, and it doesn't have any speed on it. However, it could have rolled really well. In terms of stats over sets, this could be a piece that I put on a champion that I don't use all that often, other than Faction Wars or maybe other PvE or even potentially Hydra. But I probably will end up shredding this piece because it doesn't have any speed. And so when you get 1-1-1-1, more often than not, if you're a little bit later game like I am, closing in on end game, then you probably aren't going to keep this piece of gear because you want speed on almost every piece of gear that you own, regardless of the type of set that it is, right? The only time you wouldn't want speed on a set is if you're trying to go for slow speeds. Maybe you're trying to do a slow boy build for Clan Boss. You're trying to do a slow champion like UDK, for example, who only wants Stone Skin, but that's not Doom Tower, right? Then you would want pretty much no speed on your UDK. Now, there are other champs as well, like Ursaga, who is a Void Legendary. You might want her to go slow. That might be the only time you don't want someone to go fast. Also, like a Necrit, you might not want him to go fast. You might put him in like Stone Skin or Big Bolster. But again, that's not Doom Tower sets. But in general, you want to go stats over sets unless you get the best sets with the best stats. Then you want to build your sets in the end. So in terms of this set, how would I rate this one on a scale from the other sets? Probably like a C tier, closing in on B tier set, because of the fact that it's very niche, right? It's used to, you could actually use this on an Allure, for example, the Affinity Breaker, because for Allure, if you're early in mid game, you're probably not doing hard mode dungeons yet. And so for Fire Knight, this could actually be good on an Allure on stage 25. Or on stage 24 or 20, right? For example, on stage 20, Allure is actually weak affinity. So if you're trying to do a speed run on stage 20 with Allure or other champions that are blue magic affinity and they're weak against chaos or whatever this affinity is, I think it's force actually, then yeah, you could put an Affinity Breaker set on and it will change 50% chance to change that weak hit into a critical hit, which is pretty powerful, especially for Allure, since her ability on her A1 is dependent on hitting a crit hit to reduce turn meter on the boss. So that's why it can be strong in certain cases. It's also good for damage dealers in general. For PvE mainly, I wouldn't say so much for PvP, because for PvP, you're going to want a different set, which would be lethal, right? So I'll get into that in a little bit. But yeah, so Affinity, I'm going to say it's probably like a C tier set. I wouldn't say it's the best, but you can use it. It's very niche. You can use it in certain areas of the game. It's mainly built for PvE purposes as compared to PvP purposes. So it can be strong, but it's not the best. Now, in terms of Untouchable, Untouchable is also a very, very strong set. I do have an Untouchable set on my Elva. Elva Autumnborn and other cleansing champions will do really well in Untouchable. Other support champions would do really well in Untouchable as well. Now, in the past, people used to build immunity type damage dealers for Torments and things like that. Nowadays, an immunity type damage dealer, you're probably going to use Stone Skin, but this is still an insanely good set. You're going to want to look for HP, defense, accuracy, and resistance on this set, and speed as well. So you want to go fast, you want to have good defense and like supporting stats, you want to have high resistance. And this set is good because it has plus 40 resistance, which means it's literally a resistance set +1, right? It's a 2.0 resistance set, right? So this is a very, very strong set. It's good if you're farming Scarab Boss. If you don't have a very fast team for Scarab Boss, you could use Euros, the Soul Cage, or I think it's Euros, that can solo it. Or you're going to have to use the old-fashioned, shields and then take them down slowly but surely. But that's a very slow way to do it unless you have really strong champions. Now, in terms of this set, again, it's probably a B or a B+, leaning towards A- or A tier. It's definitely a B for sure, but it's a very, very strong set still. I think it's kind of niche in a sense that you're mainly going to use this in Arena. Most people use immunity in Arena or some PvE content, and you're really looking for the resistance. That's why this set's so good, is because you can stack resistance with it, and you're just kind of getting the immunity as a bonus. And then you want to mainly focus on, again, you're going to focus on HP, you're going to focus on speed, resistance, and defense %. You don't really want attack unless you're trying to build an immunity damage dealer, but then again, that's building their resistance as well. So you don't really want high resistance on your damage dealers, but you could if you wanted to go for a high resist damage dealer. I just don't recommend that. Now, again, this is a strong set. I do recommend utilizing it. Definitely stronger than Affinity in terms of going on a support champion as compared to going on a damage dealer, right? So you could also do a blender team, right? Where you're using a ally attacker, you're using Skullcrown, you're using Senesha, and you're speeding them up. And if they're going against a Tormund team or a Valkyrie team, mainly a Tormund team who can place the freezes, this actually would come in really good hands when it comes to an ally attack, right? Because then your champions aren't freezing before they can actually attack. A lot of times with the ally attackers, they place buffs before they do the attack. So that means that they're not secure, right? So Tormund could potentially freeze them. So you got to be careful, and Untouchable could come in handy in that sense. I just don't personally recommend doing it, but you can do it if you want to build like a more end game team. It's harder to do early game. Fatal set, very strong for early and mid game. Fatal's strong, but not the best. It's more so, it's a two-piece, but it's more so for a filler set, right? You want to put this on champions that you just want to fill in additional attack and additional crit rate. For example, I'll take Little Miss Annie on my account, who does have like a sort of a filler set where it's attack percent, you're looking for speed, you're looking for crit rate, crit damage, and you're hoping to get the Ascension to speed or attack percent for more damage on your damage dealers for attack-based nukers. So in this case, it is good. If I had a crit damage with crit rate or crit damage on top of crit damage for this set, it would be better because I'd gain an additional 15% attack and 5% crit rate. So it would actually be better than me having this Avenging Gauntlet because it's going to have more crit rate. And then hopefully I get attack percent on the substats for it. So eventually I'll be able to get a crit damage gauntlet with crit rate and attack percent, and maybe even speed as well, because that's what you're looking for on the gauntlets and on the substats for that specific set. Now, if you're putting it on a defense-based champion, you could, but it's not really built for defense-based. It's mainly built for offense-based damage dealers as compared to defense-based. But if it's just, again, a filler, and you're just trying to use one piece of gear and it's going to fill the void of, you know, you don't have any other pieces that are going to outscale it because you just got a really good piece, then use this one on a defense-based damage dealer, but I don't recommend it. Okay, so the next one would be Frostbite. I personally have literally no Frostbite sets on my entire account, although it can be good in certain situations. It's good for wave-based content. It's good in arena because it catches people off guard. So this is actually a B tier set in my opinion. Fatal is like a C, B- tier set, but Frostbite, definitely B tier. It's very underrated. People don't really talk about it very often. The 15% chance to block or freeze is mainly for trying to go up against Tormund. Now you would have to have a 6-piece for this to be a 45% to get the most benefit out of this gear set, and a 10% chance to freeze, and it'll boost up to 30% if you get a 6-piece. That's how you get the most benefit out of Frostbite. It's just so difficult to build the perfect set. And this is one of the artifact types that will benefit mostly from having a full 6-piece, right? And now you could just, there are other sets though. I think it's a regular Frost set as compared to Frostbite, which is like the OG of Frost set, right? So if I scroll down here, you can see Frost, which I believe is from Ice Golem. And if you were to get a Frost set, it's 20% chance to freeze, debuff on the attacker. So this is just literally 2 Frostbite sets without having the additional chance to deflect the freeze or not get frozen. So essentially Frostbite is actually better than Frost in a 4-piece. So if you can get 4-piece Frostbite, it's better than a 4-piece Frost set. So it is a definite B tier. I wouldn't say it's an A tier set by any means, but it can catch people off guards. And to each their own, you could say it's A tier, but I personally think it's like a B tier, maybe even pushing towards C tier. You could put this on a damage dealer if you just want to try to potentially not get frozen and block the freeze from Tormund. You could put it on a support-based champion as well, which I would mainly put it on supports. In this set, I would mainly use this in PvP, but you can use it in PvE as well if you're trying to freeze the waves of enemies because you just don't have enough damage or support on your team, and you're not surviving. Maybe this helps you CC the enemy waves a little bit more. But again, this is a set that's not really necessarily worth going for or putting all your time and effort into unless you really need the help in PvE. PvP, again, it can work, but I wouldn't waste my time going for Frostbite as compared to the other sets if you're trying to do more damage. This is more for support-based champions as compared to offense-based champions. Doesn't mean you can't use it, but it's just not the best. Bloodthirst is literally just lifesteal plus 12% crit rate. That's what this is. This is from the dragon there. I forget his name, but this is from the dragon, and it's okay. It's good for early mid-game, falls off in the late game. If you're trying to get better lifesteal gear, just go for Bloodthirst. This dragon's actually pretty easy to beat, especially on normal and hard. In terms of normal mode, you're not going to get the best gear out of this. Again, if you get some legendary pieces, that's great, but it's a set of 4, so it's hard to build. I put this in like a C tier. The reason why is because it's just not something you want to go for in the late game unless you're just going to do some filler sets or you want one full set. But again, nobody really uses lifesteal these days, and this is good for PvE, not so much for PvP, and it doesn't like ignore defense or anything like that, so it's not going to do a lot. Again, it's just an upgraded lifesteal set, not the best. Guardian set, actually extremely powerful, great for Hydra, great for PvE, great for general progression, actually pretty strong in Arena as well. If you put this on an Ursaga, if you put this on other support-based champions, it could be used in Arena. I personally recommend this more so for PvE, for like Hydra or Clan Boss, if you wanted to put a support champion in this. But for general progression, this is also very strong. I would give this about an A tier, in my opinion, because you can put this on damage dealers and support-based champions. It's regen gear, basically. It only does 10%. I think regen's 15% of the health. But let me just double check that. Regen is going to be 15% every turn. Except the good thing, the benefit about this one, even though it's 10%, is that this one will also absorb 10% of all the damage to your allies, and it heals by 10%. So it's 5% less healage every turn, but it does absorb the damage that your allies take. So this is also really, really strong on a Vogoth. So if you use Vogoth who takes hits, so Vogoth is an epic champion who does take hits, he can be used in this set and it would be really, really strong. So he'll take the damage and the additional damage. When he takes more damage, he's healing your allies with this specific passive. So that's really, really cool. So very strong on Vogoth and other support-based champions. That is definitely an A tier set. Fortitude, I'm going to say B tier. The reason why I say B tier, it's just resistance with defense. I mean, 40 resistance, I would prefer, this is just me personally, I prefer Untouchable, which is like B tier or A tier set, over the Fortitude. Yes, you can have a little bit more defense by 10%, but again, I would rather have the Untouchable where I have immunity and I'm getting the resistance over the defense, because defense is somewhat easy to scale. And once you get past like 4,500 or 5,000 defense, it doesn't scale as well after 5 or 6K unless you're using it on a damage dealer. So preferably Untouchable over Fortitude. This is a B tier set in my opinion. Doesn't mean that you can't use this and use it wisely or well on specific support-based champions. It is a strong set. You get it from Bommel, but personally I think it should get a little bit of a buff, and then people would farm Bommel more often. And it's funny because Bommel's like the hardest boss to beat unless you have specific champions, right? So I'm surprised that this set is here, but it's not my favorite set personally. Lethal 100% is the best set, hands down, in all of Doom Tower. This is for damage dealers. Crit rate plus ignores 25% of any enemy defense. This is Savage Gear on steroids, okay? This is one of the strongest sets in the game for damage dealers, hands down. Your defense-based damage dealers, offense-based damage dealers. Even if you wanted to put it on support-based champions that do some damage, you could put it on support-based champions as well. Not highly recommended, but you could do it. This is definitely the strongest set out of all the sets. This is A+ tier. This is the best one, hands down. Fortitude's like a B tier, but Lethal, hands down, A+. This is the best set. This is one you should be farming on every rotation of Dark Fae. If you want to farm a little bit of Scarab for the Untouchable, I recommend it. If you want to farm the Griffin for the other set as well, I do recommend it. Bommel, not as recommended. But yeah, so that's all the sets. But like I said, Lethal, I will say, is hands down the best. It's on like most of my damage dealers. So for example, Sun Wukong's got Lethal. And then I'll go to, so this champion has Savage because I couldn't get lethal on him. I also have my Supreme Alhain in lethal. I have, who else in lethal? I have random offset pieces in lethal as well. He's in Savage. Let me see. Where is one of my strongest champions? Here he is. So Samson the Masher, he's in lethal for me as well. He's one of my strongest champions for HP-based damage dealer on the account. Lethal with Cruel. So definitely the strongest gear in the game. Anyways, I'm not gonna keep going because I don't want this video to be too long. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. What do you think about those sets? How would you rank them? I'm not gonna go a full ranking. If you want me to do a separate ranking video on 0 to 8 or 1 to 8, you know, 1 being the best, 8 being the worst, I can do that for you in a separate video. But let me know your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see you on a video soon. Take care.